Hello everyone and welcome. It's Shanna. So glad you're here today. Now today's cards, we are using the leftover panels from the last video I did when I worked with Simon's Timeless Textures, Simon Hurley's Timeless Textures. Now here I use the Hummingbird Garden embossing folder, and then this one I use the Flowing Florals embossing folder and the layered stencil that goes with it. And then we've got the rattan cane 3D embossing folder that I'm going to emboss this blue panel here, thinking that I'm going to use it on one of my cards, and then I'll wind up not, but then we'll use a little strip of it. So I just ran this through my die cutting machine, and we've got 3D impression there. And now we've got all these panels here that we're going to work with. We've got the Hummingbird Garden with the die cut hummingbirds attached to them, and then we've got the other one. This one is an odd size because I cut it away, and I'm looking at my little layers. I have these little cardstock pieces that have measurements on there. I'm trying to decide what I want to cut it down to, and I'm looking at that. I think I'll do something along that line. I do some cutting on it, so I'm not going to give you exact measurements. It's just I'm trying to get it to a panel that will look proportionately well on an A2 size card base. So right now I'm just looking at it, trying to decide what I want to cut away. I really don't want to cut any of the hummingbird away, but I thought I'd rather cut away the tip of his wing than the tip of his beak. So that's what I did. And I'm just going to measure this and just kind of trim until I get it exactly like what I want it. And we're going to work with this panel on our first card. Now I've got that hummingbird, or that rattan cane 3D embossed folder there, panel, and I'm going to cut it down thinking that I'm going to layer it with this, and then as I move along I'll decide to do something different. So I'm thinking I'm going to layer it on here and just have some top above and below. I had kind of sketched this out on a piece of paper and was thinking this is what I was going to do, but then I decided to bring in this other embossed panel that was laying in my stash, and then I wound up going in a different direction with it. So I'm trimming this down again because I'm like, I don't know that I'm seeing enough blue around it with that panel. And I'm thinking that's what I don't like. But then I'll figure out that I just don't want to use that blue panel. Now it's going to take me a minute to figure that out. So the blue panel is going to be hanging around here for a minute as we move through our different elements, and then I'll eventually figure it out. So I'm realizing I need to bring in a card base. So I'm going to grab me a card base, and we're going to give it a score, and then I'm going to line this up and start thinking about what I'm doing here. And this is what I originally had in mind, that I would lay it like this. We'd have the white on the either side of it. And then I grabbed this embossing folder and thought, well, I could use this. It had a weird edge on it, so I'm going to cut it off. It's like I didn't line it up very well with the embossing folder when I did it. And so I'm just going to trim it down and get it where I want it. And then we'll get it laid down on the card base and layer our things up and take another look at it. So I'm going to lay this down. And this is the Crackle embossing folder. I'll link it in the description box below if I remember. And I'm just giving it another trim because it just didn't look like I had an even frame all the way around it. So I just trimmed it up again just to kind of even up the sides or whatever. And then I'm going to lay this on here, and I'm looking at it and I'm like, ugh, I don't know if I like it or not. So I decide I'm going to bring in a blending brush and blend some ink on this and see if this helps me to like it better. And I had just a real light pink on there. This is a pink blending brush. I didn't grab the ink, and it's not putting much ink down on there. And so I'm going to actually grab my ink pad, and we're going to put some real ink on here. Actually, I just switched blending brushes is what I did. I grabbed my Seedless Preserve brush that I use for that, and then I laid down some darker color on it, and I liked how that looked. I liked the darker color, and I thought I think it was the color that I used on the wings of the hummingbird, and so I thought, well, it'll tie that back in and I can use that. And so we're going to get our blue panel laid down on there. Then I'll realize that because of my pink panel, I'm going to need to cut this down because I've got this at 5.5 and the pink panel must be at 5 1/4. And so I'll cut that down, And then we're going to take another look at it. I'm just going to line everything up and just take another peek at it and see if it's going to work. And so I'll just layer everything up. And I've got on a sweatshirt because it was cold here near the end of June, and I had on a heavy sweatshirt to keep myself warm as I was working. Strange weather for us for June, but anyway. So I'm going to go ahead and glue this panel down. I'm thinking I'm going in that direction, but I will, before it's all said and done, this is where I'm deciding. There we go. That looks good. I don't need that blue in there. I just need to get this laid down and it will work. So I'm going to trim this a little bit, and then I'm going to I think I bring my ink back in and go around it and try to go a little bit heavier on it and just have a little bit more coverage around there and just add a little bit more ink. And of course we've got our little microfiber lime green towel that I have to wipe all the ink off my glass mat with. So I'm going to get this lined up on here, and I think this looks pretty. It's very soft. You see, I was looking at it upside down. I'm like, turn it around. I think I even said to myself, turn it the right way, Shanna. Anyway, now we're going to get this laid down on there, and I think I've got a card design that I can live with. So this is some really thin paper that I've got here. I was trying to buy some Nina Solar White heavy cardstock, and I got light. And I mean, it's just thin. So I'm just using it for layers. Don't really like it. I'm going to go back to my hammer mill. And we're going to get some foam tape laid down on here and just add a little bit of dimension here, because we don't have a lot going on. You know, we've got the dimension from the embossing folders that I've chosen to use and pair up, but just to add just a little bit more interest to this card, we will get it laid down on here. And I think it looks pretty, very soft, very feminine looking, I think. Now I'm trying to get it lined up straight on there, so I'm going to use the lines on my glass board there to get my card straight, and then I can lay it on there straight. And then I'm going to bring in this Hugs die set, and it has coordinating. It's a 3-layer Hugs, and then you've got coordinating sub-sentiments that you can put with it. And so I'm going to bring it in, and we're going to get our Hugs and our sentiments ready. So I just grabbed some small panels out of my scrap bin, and I've got a couple of blues and a white, and we're going to do the Hugs layers in these 3 different colors here. We've got the blue on the bottom of the hummingbird, and I thought it would be nice to bring it back in. And so we're going to use these panels and just die cut out our Hugs. And I'll just bring in my little scout and we'll get these die cut out. And then we'll have our sentiment. And for this one, I'm going to use Sending Hugs. And I think I actually will stamp. This stamp set is one of those that you stamp everything at once and you die cut everything at once. So that's really handy. But so we're going to use that, and we'll have several sentiments that we can use, and then we'll have for both of our cards that we're doing. So I'm just going to trim this white panel down just so that I can run all 3 of these through at the same time and just make a quick run for myself if I can get them lined up here. And then we'll just run them through, and we'll have all 3 of them. This is a really fun set. I don't have very many 3-layered sets. I have a couple of them, and I think they're fun when they've got the 2 shadows and then the word. I think it's super fun. You can choose to use, you know, all of them or just 2 of them or whatever. And you could use the word with the big shadow and have a real big shadow, or just use the small one and have a real thin shadow. So you've got some versatility with this die set. And that's always great because you can get more out of your supplies when you've got, you know, when they're can be versatile and it feels like you have more options. So I really like that. So I'm going to bring in just a white panel here. I'm going to bring in my mini Misty, and we're going to die cut out these sub-sentiments, and we'll have those ready. We're going to stamp them and die cut them out, I should say. So I'll get them laid down on here, and we will just grab some. I think I bring in some VersaFine Clair Nocturne ink. Yes, and stamp them up. I love this ink. This ink is crisp, and it just really does a great job on your sentiments. It's the best I've found so far. I've tried. I did Memento ink for a long time, and I still have my ink pads, and sometimes we'll use them, but I just think this yields the best results. So my panel moved a little bit. I repositioned it back in the corner and then stamped again so that we had just a real good inking. And then we'll bring in that die and get it lined up on there. And then if I cut this panel down, I can run that die through the Scout machine and it'll fit. So I'm just going to bring in some Best Ever craft tape, and we'll just tape it down so it doesn't move on me. I've got a lot of sentiments there I do not want to ruin, so we'll get it taped down. I'm going to use my scissors and just cut that off, and then I can bring my Scout in and run it through my Scout, and we will have our sentiments. And you can see that Scout Daria brought to me on her trip. I think it was the end of May, mid-May, and I've gotten some use out of it. You can tell by the plates I've really been using that thing, and I love it. So we'll just get those put aside. We've got all of those sentiments, and now I'm ready to grab. I'm going to do sending, and I'm going to put sending hugs on this one, and we'll use it. I'm going to get this tape off of here, and then they'll just kind of all pop out of my die set. There we go. So now we've got the dies that we need for today's card, and we've got plenty for later. So I will take and put those in a container and keep the ones that I didn't use. And then what I would have to do is just die cut out some more hugs to go with them, and I would have some sentiments ready to go. So I'm just bringing in my crafty tools from Spellbinders and popping the centers of these letters out, and then we'll get it laid down on its layers. And then I've got my little tweezers that are part of that tool set, and we'll just get a little bit of glue down on here, and then we'll get it laid down on our bottom shadow layer. Just give it a good press, and then we're going to do this. Now, if I'd have thought about it, I could have used some of my Spellbinders double-sided tape sheets and die cut it out with the tape on the back, and I wouldn't have to do this with the glue. But I didn't think about it until I was putting the glue on there. I thought, I should have used one of those sheets, but I didn't. So, and I won't do it on the next one either. So I'm going to just give this a little press. These line up really easy. You can see it went down real nice. And so I think it's beautiful, and I think it brings the blue out in the bird, and it's just enough to add that other color to it. So I've got my sending, and I'm just looking through here to see if there's anything else that I want to use. And I'm trying out the great big hugs that goes with it, and I'll decide to go with sending hugs, and we're just going to use that. And we'll get our hugs laid down on there, and I just glued it directly down. And there was enough raised areas that I think it glued very nice and flat. It wasn't wobbly at all. And now I'm going to bring in some foam tape for my sending, and then we'll just pop that portion of it up, and it'll lay down on there nice. So I've just got a little strip, and we'll get it laid down on there. And then our first card will be finished. And we've got enough dimension and interest on there with the ink blending and the different embossed panels. I'm not going to bring any gems into this card. I don't even bring any into the other card. I think when you've got all this detail, you don't necessarily need it. Now here's where I've got the flowing floral 3D embossed panel, in which I've used the layered flowing floral stencil and just colored it in with a stencil. And I didn't do a great job of lining it up. It was like my first play with it, but I'm going to use it, and you're not going to know because we are going to put this blue strip on there that is the rattan cane. And this was the piece that I cut off when I was thinking I was going to use the larger panel for the other card, and I just decided to just bring in a little bit of color and just represent that rattan cane 3D embossing folder. I'm just going to trim this off using the guillotine. I could have used my scissors, but I didn't. And then I am going to bring in another bird. I have die cut out another bird from some white cardstock, and I took it and ran it through the embossing folder so that I would get that embossed detail on the hummingbird. And we'll add it to this panel, and we're going to have two hummingbird cards, and the birds are both in the same direction. I chose to do that because I was going to use that rattan panel on that strip there, and I thought it might look odd if I laid the bird and facing in the other direction, and so I just decided to go with this. So we're going to bring in the blending brushes and add some ink to this bird, much like we did the other one, only I'm going to put the blue on the wings and the pink on the breast of the hummingbird. And it's basically, I just flip-flop the colors that I put down on there, and I laid a lot more ink on the second one, and I actually blended the pink into the blue and got a little purple in the kind of the midsection of it, and I thought that was kind of fun, a little bit different, but went a little bit heavier with this one. And the stenciled pattern that is on the background panel, it was a little bit heavier than the panel on the other one, and so it made sense to make the bird a little bit darker. So for this one, I've got a white layer, the bottom layer. I've got a vellum layer, and then I've got a blue layer. And I'm going to lay the blue layer on the vellum first because I need to get it down so that I can put the glue where the blue is on the vellum to kind of cover up the glue on the vellum so that it doesn't show through. So I wanted to get my blue laid down on there first, and then I can just put little dots of glue where my cardstock is covering it, and then you won't see messy glue on the vellum when I go to lay it down. And it actually came out very clean. I was really pleased with it. And so we'll lay this down, and it went down equally as well. It really does lay down easily. And so we've got another hugs, and this is what I have in mind here. And so I'm just going to get my bird glued down, and then we'll get our sentiment glued down and our subset sentiment, and it'll come together. We're going to have two really, really pretty, delicate cards. I think they're very, I'm saying delicate just because they're so light and airy and pretty. I like the color schemes of them. So for this, I'm going to put some foam on it because I'm going to be layering it over that rattan cane panel that's on there, and it's on top of the other embossed panel. So I'm just going to get some foam on one side of it to just kind of help balance this out, and then we'll get it laid down on there. I think I'll put some glue on the G and the S. Just making sure I got all of the release papers off. And we'll snuggle that hug down on there. And then I'm going to bring in the love and it's going to say love and hugs. Just another little strip of foam tape. I think I got it a little long. I'm going to have to trim it off. There we go. And we'll just tuck that in. And I think it's really pretty. I think they're both pretty. So I got to use those extra panels. I hope you like them. If you did, consider hitting the like button. And if you haven't subscribed, I'd love to have you subscribe. Thanks for watching. Have a great day. Take care. Bye-bye.